It's been a shocking year for broadcast media.
Newshub, one of the biggest newsrooms in the country, is set to shut down.
Newshub gone, TVNZ cutting.
TVNZ today confirming up to 68 jobs could go.
And now, after posting an $85 million loss, there are more cuts to come. Yet, new CEO Jodi O'Donnell wouldn't be anywhere else.
I love this organisation and I'm really clear on what its purpose is.
But that means overseeing a painful switch to digital.
We have a $30 million earnings gap.
And revealing when we might say,
it's Goodnight from Channel 2.
Goodbye to free-to-air TV. Welcome to NBR's Back in Business podcast. I'm your host, Simon Shepherd. She took on the job in January, and since then, TVNZ CEO Jodi O'Donnell has announced a half-year loss, cut staff and iconic TV shows, and now overseen a massive full-year loss. A loss of $85 million. It must have hurt making that announcement.
Hi Simon, how are you? Kia ora.
Kia ora.
We signalled in early June that we were going to have a significant loss.
She prefers to answer with numbers, not emotion.
We said there'd be a range between $28 and $33 million EBIT loss. We're within the lower end of that range this week. So the announcement, whilst it's an $85 million overall operating loss, EBIT loss is $28.5 million and there's a $62.1 million non-cash impairment.
So what was that for?
A non-cash impairment is part of our end-of-year financial review, which effectively looks at the assets on the balance sheet and does a re-evaluation of those.
So what have you re-evaluated down in value?
We don't announce what we've exactly broken that down with, but what it is, it's a make-up of things that sit on the balance sheet, like the building and the content costs.
But behind the numbers, there are the people and the TV programs.
Fair Go, also confirmed, is proposed to go.
TV staple Fair Go, off air.
Sunday, proposed gone.
Sunday, gone too. And with the restructure, about 65 jobs gone from across the broadcaster. Looking back on the year, you saved $9.9 million in cost savings, but that was as a result of more than 60 jobs going, scrapping of iconic free-to-air shows like Sunday, Fair Go. Are you happy with the way that was handled?
The $9.9 million in cost savings is a make-up of our overall costs across the business. So yes, there is some impact from the changes that we made with people and programs. Mm-hmm. It also includes other content costs and other operating costs as well. Yeah. Nobody wants to announce any loss of roles, and so if I reflect back on the March announcement, I made that really clear at the time that we didn't want to be making that decision. Did it go as well as it could have? Well, firstly, I don't think that can ever go well, but of course, the stress and the changes that went throughout the market at that stage. Within our business, obviously, we had a challenge from our union around the collective agreement. So that added some more complexity to that. Obviously, we were given a result that we had breached our employment collective agreement. We needed to then clarify what it was that we needed to do differently, and that's why we took it to the employment court to ensure that we had that clarity around that, which we now have. And so for any future changes, we are really clear on what it is that we need to do, the steps in place and the process. We'll
come to future changes in a moment, but that particular process, is that complete, or are you still working through personal grievances as a result?
That particular process is complete.
In this era, no programs are safe. Even long-running fan favourite Shortland Street is being slimmed down. Shortland Street's going to 3 nights a week next year. Is that part of the cost reduction?
We've worked with SPP to ensure that we can have a more revenue positive outlook from Shortland Street. So yes, that was part of the discussions that we had as well earlier in the year.
He took a severe blow to the head. He's got a GCS of 7. He's not looking good. We need to get him to a hospital.
There is more cost cutting to come, isn't there? Because you say in your release, we are working with our people to find solutions to a $30 million challenge. So how many jobs are likely to go in this round of cuts?
Our business plan for FY25 has us losing About $34 million. So what I've identified and I've signalled publicly and to all of our staff is that we have a $30 million earnings gap. So that means we need to find ideas and ways to either improve our revenue or to decrease our costs.
Yeah.
So that's the conversation that we've started with our people. We're starting to get ideas that are coming in from all of our staff around how we might do either of those two things.
So is this the process starting earlier? Have you learnt from the previous process? That's what I'm asking.
That's right, yes,
Okay.
yes.
Have you indicated to staff which areas?
No, there is no decisions that have been made at this stage or no suggestions at all. We're at the idea stage. We're asking all of our staff and sharing as much information as we can so that they can give us some ideas around that, and then we will go into decision making.
If we look at numbers in terms of what you saved last time when you went through this process, $9.9 million, and you're talking about a $30 million hole, that's 3 times the size. So are we going to see a much larger program of cost reduction this time around?
We haven't made any decisions on where the $30 million earnings gap or earnings savings is going to be yet.
Right. So you can't say it's going to be bigger or smaller than the last time this happened earlier this year?
I'm saying we've got a $30 million earnings gap that can come from cost savings or that can come from revenue generations. We have more costs across our business than just people. So people are a part of our costs, but they are not the whole cost within this business. We clearly spend a lot of money on content and a lot of money on technology.
Right.
So there are lots of cost lines, I suppose you could say, across the business, and that's what we're asking for ideas from. It's not just about people and it's not just about shows.
News seemed to be hit quite hard last time. That's not exempt, that's as part of this process as well, that would be part of the review?
We're asking for any ideas across the business.
Looking back on the year, obviously it's been a tumultuous time for free-to-air media and broadcast media. Have you taken any lessons from, say, the demise of News Hub and what they had to do there?
Oh, look, that was a clearly very challenging time across the industry, and we've continued to see, a lot of changes across the industry. There's obviously a 3 News product that's there today, and we really welcome competition. So I don't know if there's any learnings you could necessarily say from something like that, other than to say that as a commercial business, we need to operate within the realms of our revenue. And so we need to make sure that we continue to keep this business operational and that we do future-proof it and build a sustainable business.
So let's get back to the numbers and what a sustainable business looks like for TVNZ, its staff and the audience. So we talked about the revenue gap. Our revenue was down this financial year, $38.8 million. You're talking about a $30 million challenge. What's the strategy to plug that, apart from cost reductions?
So clearly, revenue makes up 97% of all of our revenue across the business. I'm talking about ad revenue here.
Yeah.
So there's lots of strands of work in play with our transformation strategy that ensures that we can start to monetize our audiences a lot better in the future. So you would have seen the audience numbers that we released as part of our financial results showed that we had a really stable broadcast year. So in terms of audience share, our TV share held up. And in the digital space, our digital viewing increased by 25%. So it's making sure that we're developing products and market that advertisers want and that allows us to be much more competitive with the global tech platforms.
As you say, it's about monetising that digital audience. You're shifting from linear to digital and it's monetising that. Are you actively considering, say, a subscription model or a model where you have to pay to watch ad-free?
We've openly said that we'll look at all of these things from a future perspective. We do need to diversify our revenue. Yeah. So I think it's clear that the last 18 months has made that evident to us. So when we're building out our Digital Plus strategy and building our future platform, we will ensure there's optionality around it. I think there's definitely an opportunity for us to think about subscription or pay-per-view models as a part of that.
How do you think the New Zealand audience is going to react to that when they're so used to TVNZ being a free-to-air and free broadcaster?
So just to be clear, we will always be free. We will always be a free option.
A free option, because you're talking about subscription possibilities. So.
Possibilities. So under the TVNZ Act, we need to be free and accessible to all New Zealanders. So that will continue. But there might be, for example, some content that we might put behind a paywall that may be ad-free. or there might be some additional content that we purchase that we put behind a paywall as well. So it's around really understanding viewers' behaviour and finding ways that we can diversify.
Who would actually pay for that? Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. Have you identified whether there is an audience out there that would pay for that kind of content, given that you're up against, the overseas streamers?
Yeah, we've definitely done some initial work in that space, so we haven't got any plans to announce today, but it certainly will be something that we think about in the future.
I can give you the opportunity and the platform to announce it if you want. No? Okay. What about sport? Sport seems to be an audience growth opportunity for you. You've had the Euro football coverage, the Black Caps. Are there more key events that you want to announce?
I don't have anything additional to announce today,
Right.
But we can see that Kiwis love sport. The challenge in the ad-funded model is around being able to acquire those rights.
Yeah, how could you afford to do that when you're booking such big losses? How can you afford to pay for sports rights?
I think we need to do it in a way that actually obviously is commercially positive for us.
Yeah.
So, we're not going to be able to acquire, sports rights that sees us lose millions of dollars.
Yeah.
That's just not an
So things
option.
like rugby are off the table, so it's going to be other kinds of sports like cricket.
We've had lots of conversations with sporting bodies that are
Right.
really interested in getting their sport out from behind a paywall and free to audiences. And so that's what our offer is to the sporting bodies. But like I said, from our perspective, we can't be investing millions of dollars if we can't monetise it and we can't deliver a return.
So you're saying free to audiences, so it would not in any way be a pay-per-view for sport?
I don't know. That could be an option in the future.
Very coy, very coy. Look, you may be growing your digital audience, but as we said, does that translate to growing enough revenue? Have you worked out a way to do that yet?
We believe that we have demonstrated a path to profitability.
You have?
So that's what we've been working on. That's our
A
digital
lot of other
plus.
broadcasters will be very interested in that.
It's not going to happen in the next 12 months, so let me be clear.
Okay.
So this is our 5-year digital plus strategy.
Yeah.
So firstly, we need to realign the cost base, and that's really important. The second part of it is obviously investing in our future infrastructure, and that's what we're calling the transformation program within the business.
Okay. So, but how much of TVNZ's revenue is generated by digital offerings right at the moment?
It's about 25%.
25%. So you've got to turn that into, what, 75%, 80%? What's your goal in terms of digital revenue?
Well, what we're saying is that we expect it to at least probably be half our revenue in the next 3 to 4 years.
Half your revenue. How much of a difference or how much of a problem is it in this transformation that you've had people paying a lot of money for free-to-air spots and people aren't willing to pay as much money for digital spots?
That's actually completely
What's wrong?
incorrect.
Is it?
Correct, it is.
That seems to be the perception.
Yeah, no, it's not. TV in this market has always been really cheap, and so there's actually quite a difference.
TV has been cheap.
It has been, yeah, it really for advertisers. For advertisers. When you look at global markets, New Zealand advertising of TV has been quite cheap for a long time.
So why don't people want to pay for it then? Because it's dropped right off.
It's advertisers. It's not obviously the public. It's advertisers, because they've been encouraged to obviously think about the digital platforms that can offer particularly short-term results, and have done a really good job at selling their platforms with really strong data and analytics.
So when we say digital platforms, we're talking about Google and we're talking about Meta and those
Yes.
kinds of digital platforms,
Yes.
who have been blamed for taking away a lot of the advertising revenue. That's correct. That's your point?
Correct.
The government is pushing ahead with the Fair Digital News Bargaining Bill to make those kinds of companies pay something for use of, say, like news. Could that make a difference to TVNZ's revenue?
It could. It depends how the government firstly collects that and what they do with that. So, on the assumption that they put it into a contestable fund, for example, that could be one option to do that.
Do you wish it had happened much earlier?
I'm encouraged that the government's actually leaning into it now.
Okay, which, I'm going to read the subtext there is, yes, it should have come earlier and finally they're doing something about it. Okay, we'll take it like that. Okay. In your release, you say that linear TV is going to become a consumer for your digital operations. I don't know what that means. What does that mean?
Okay, so at the moment, we are distributing our content across 3 platforms. So at the moment, we distribute it on terrestrial, we also deliver over satellite, and we deliver over the internet, which is obviously our TVNZ Plus streaming platform. That's why broadcasters, particularly TV broadcasters, are really challenged, because they've got these 3 different models. So they're trying to continue to sweat the assets effectively on their broadcast infrastructure, as well as building their future infrastructure.
By split the assets, you mean just use them to the end date? Is that what you're talking about?
Effectively, and that's how we've been able to save the money that we're using for our transformation at the moment. Is we've been sweating and not investing in our broadcast assets to ensure that we can invest in our digital future. So what that means is that our channels will be run still as they are today, but in the future they will all be on digital. So they'll all be over the internet.
The first feature film that I introduced was Robin Hood.
And that brings us to the issue of when is linear free-to-air TV, first broadcast in June 1960, going to be switched off? And how can you guarantee all New Zealanders will still have access?
When that time is obviously very determined on working with our shareholder to make sure that all New Zealanders continue to still have access, because we know that obviously not everybody has the ability to access fast broadband at the moment.
Yeah, so do you have a time frame for when you're going to switch off linear TV over free-to-air?
We don't yet, but once we get to 2030, I think that gives us an option, and that's the intention of the Digital Plus strategy, is that once we get to 2030, we have the option and enough scale on our digital platform to be able to do that. But like I said...
So 2030 could be a target date for switching off?
Could be. Yes. However, like I said, the other things need to also line up with that, and that is the fact that, like I said, 86% of New Zealanders at the moment have access to fibre and broadband. So we would need to make sure that would be much higher.
That's right. So you have a moral and a legal responsibility to those people, don't you?
Legislatively, we do. The
TVNZ
Act.
As a state broadcaster, do you have a moral obligation to provide that kind of content as well?
Well, we wouldn't make that decision without talking to our shareholder, obviously.
Okay. Are you caught between being the state-owned broadcaster and you have a commercial mandate? So which one wins out when you're thinking about that audience? As you move to digital only and switching off the legacy broadcast technology, where does the loyalty lie?
Being a public broadcaster does come with obligations. We've always been a commercial broadcaster, so we've always had a commercial mandate, so that hasn't changed, but there are obviously times that you're able to spend more within the local content space, and times that we're going through right now where we aren't able to invest as much in local in that space. So we believe we're still delivering on our obligations. That will absolutely be imperative for us. Our role is to ensure we deliver the best of local and international content to New Zealanders that is relevant and is enjoyed. So we'll continue to offer breadth of content across the board to ensure that we do obviously deliver on that mandate.
Is your mandate to all New Zealanders, or is it to 95% or 90%?
To all New Zealanders.
All New Zealanders.
Yeah, all New Zealanders.
So maybe you would never be able to switch off.
That would have to be a conversation that we have with our shareholder.
Is there any chance under that commercial mandate that you are preparing TVNZ for sale?
Not to my knowledge, no.
You haven't been told to sell it by the government?
You'd have to ask that question of our shareholder.
No, but not to your knowledge that you are preparing for a sale. Okay. You became CEO in January this year. It's not very long, but you've been here for more than 20 years and you ended up as the commercial director before becoming the CEO. You knew the dire straits New Zealand media was in before you took this job. So why did you take the job?
I love this organisation and I'm really clear on what its purpose is, and I wanted to be a part of what the solution was for that. So we were working through our strategy at that stage. That was the first thing obviously that I needed to wrap my head around moving into this role, was resetting the strategy to actually prove that we could deliver a sustainable business and a pathway to profitability.
You knew that there was lots of tough decisions. You were part of that process and you knew that you would be the front and fronting those as it played out this year. Do you regret that?
No, I don't regret that at all. Like I said, I want the best for this organisation, and I knew there would have to be some hard decisions that were made. I always said to all of our staff that I'd be open and transparent about that. I know that things just didn't necessarily always land as well as what they would have hoped, but I've continued to offer that openness and transparency.
In your release, You say the advertising market decline is moderating and that the economy is showing signs of stabilising. But you are predicting another financial loss for next year.
Yeah, so what I've been careful, I guess, to not say is that there are green shoots, because that isn't what we're seeing at the moment.
Right.
So there is a slowdown of the decline.
Right.
So there's a slowdown of the decline.
Things are still getting worse, but slowly.
There's a slowdown and decline of our linear revenue, of our broadcast revenue, but we are seeing really good, strong growth in our digital platform. And that gives me confidence that the strategy is right and that the changes and the challenges that we've got ahead of us are really evident.
So when can we see TVNZ back in black?
Probably in the next 2 to 3 years.
And that wraps up this episode of Back in Business. All the audio links used are listed in the podcast description. For more comprehensive and breaking business news, head to nbr.co.nz. Thanks to Creative Director Michael Hickmott and Content Producer Joseph Hisayasu. Our next episode drops on Thursday. I'm Simon Shepherd. We'll catch you then.